lower price than traditional plastic surgery. Good evening, my name is Sarah Wong. Tonight we have Dr. Samuel Lam, who is here to share with us his revolutionary approach to facial rejuvenation and hair restoration. Dr. Lam is a graduate from Princeton University and Baylor College of Medicine. His professional training was completed at Columbia University. Dr. Lam is double board certified by the American Board of Facial Plastic Reconstructive Surgery and Head and Neck Surgery. In addition to his many medical awards and accomplishments, Dr. Lam is also a talented photographer and artist. He did his own illustrations for his medical textbooks. In between his speaking engagements and work, Dr. Lam enjoys painting and drawing. He's also a member of EO. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to present Dr. Lam.
Right. I think the objective tonight is we're going to move all the WPOers back to the YPO world. Is there enough room? All right, we're going to have a little fun tonight. The goal tonight is not to bore you with a lot of silly details, but I want you guys to start rethinking what you know from the ground up. Tonight is going to be the antithesis, as you heard from the video, of everything you do know or you may know. We have to ask ourselves a fundamental question. What defines youth? And if you think that's sort of funny, I don't think it's funny. And the reason it's not funny is look at a lot of people that have had plastic surgery. They don't look younger. They don't even look like themselves, let alone human perhaps, right? My goal is to restore that. And we first have to understand what youth is. So I always challenge my patients to go out there and consult a few textbooks. You have access to these textbooks. They're known as Glamour, Allure, and Vogue. That is what youth and beauty is, not the plastic surgery textbooks that we may think are the answer. This is what you think about, right? I call the two-finger rule. Don't I look better, Doc? No. You look crazy doing that. So, you know, this is what the traditional model is, wrinkles and gravity. I want to introduce another concept to you tonight, which is loss of volume. And in my opinion, it's the cornerstone to everything that I do for all races, and it is incisionless. So we need to rethink everything from the ground up. What's going to be fun tonight is I want to challenge your perception, and then we're going to challenge everything you know from the ground up. Okay. If there are three components now to the aging process, and I've challenged you and thought volume loss is there, when does it happen? It actually happens from the day you're born. And in a way, it's good. Don't worry, I'm not making babies here. But the idea is that we lose volume from the moment we're born. And I'm going to go through the evolution of shape, a new idea that I came up with and I presented for the first time only about 2 weeks ago in St. Louis. Wrinkles and gravity occur later. And that's an important thing to understand. Evolution of shape. Let's focus on shape. If we start with the child is round. And that's how fundamentally, if you look at another person, you can make an instant judgment about that person's age before you can see a wrinkle, before you can see any gravity effects. You say, oh, that person is a certain age. And why is it? It's to do with shape. And if you look at the shape of a child, it's a circle. As we proceed into our teenage years, it's still a circle. And that circle, some people don't particularly care for when they're young. They say, boy, I'm too round. And that's a lot of baby fat. What happens in their early 20s? Same thing, it's still a circle. I know this talk is getting boring now. We're going to change shapes in a moment. And as we proceed forward into our mid-20s, there's a hint of a triangle coming through. And if you look at the face, you can begin to see it. So forget for a moment that your brows need to be in the ceiling, and forget about your neck needing to be way up here, and start rethinking what you see. That's what I do every day. As we go into our late 20s, what you see is the triangle with a hint of the circle. Can you guys see here? I'll move over here. And you can see that that's beginning to show through. As we proceed with age, into our early to mid-30s, we have more of a triangle, and you can see it there. What's really interesting is about 80% of my work is on females, so my focus tonight is on women. I do men as well. But if you take a look at this is oftentimes 80% where women want to be. They don't want that early 20s look when that face is so round. So the question is, how do we get there? Is it just an a priori decision on my part to do something for you? The answer is no. What I do is I start with your old photographs so that I can have a blueprint of design where I understand where you want to be. As we go forward into our late 30s, early 40s, we get a little bit of hollowness around the eyes. And so what you may perceive as ptosis or hanging, it's deflation. And the lower face maybe gains a couple pounds after some children. And there's a flattening, there's a squaring off of the face. And as we continue with age, we gain some weight into our mid-40s and 50s, and the lower face begins to dominate. So you begin to see this inverted triangle peeking through. And obviously this would be an extreme example. Hopefully none of us get to this point. But there's a lot of hollowness around the eyes. That's extreme aging. And the lower face truly dominates. So what is our objective in all this? The objective is to flip the triangle. Not necessarily create a circle, but to create something that I think most people would think is beautiful. And that's what we're trying to achieve. What's interesting is there was an article recently in the New York Times that looked at what our current culture's perception of beauty falls. And where it is right now is actually more of a circle. That may be, I don't know, if a male-dominated perspective or not, and it's an early 20s look, but that's fullness. And that's not necessarily what most people want. But it's an idea from our perception of society, what we see as beauty. And that's sort of an interesting aside. Okay, let's start with someone that's gorgeous in her 50s and why. Let's break it down fundamentally, analytically, why. Let's start with the brow. Now, when I say brow, what does that mean? It's not just the sculpted eyebrow. It's the entire soft tissue complex that resides over the eyelid. Now, look at that for a moment. Is it very high, sculpted, or is it low and full? It's low and full, right? Okay, but does it look low and full to you? It doesn't look bad. It actually looks gorgeous. So we have to challenge our idea, because when you come to my office and say, don't I need this, doctor? You can go to my colleague, okay, but not me. Take a look at that eye. Now, some people actually like her in her 50s more than her 30s, because there's that triangle. Do you see the triangle? Look for the triangles. Don't look at the wrinkles. Take yourself away and start looking at what's beautiful. Now, I'm glad you haven't eaten yet, because the next photo is scary. If you like the photo on your right, you can get up and leave right now. Clearly, if you take a look at that brow, it's much higher than it was in youth. It's empty, it's sculpted. Is that young to you? No, clearly not. Because if you think about the aging process, it's volume depletion. We just established that. And this woman had her age advanced through traditional surgery and her identity taken. So she actually, I think, had a little fat grafting because she looks better than this photo recently. But in the same token, I think she did go through the process of looking, well, you can pick the word. So let's have a little fun idea with this. When we're young, we're grapes. As we get older, we become raisins. So the question I have for you is, why should we take that raisin, cut, pull, stretch, and lift it into a pea? Because a pea looks nothing like a grape. And I can probably tell you, you probably see a lot of peas walking around town. Why don't we take the fruit, not make you look like a fruit, but bring you back to where you were? And that's so important, right? I don't think anyone wants to look like a different human being unless you're in the witness protection program. That's something that I don't encourage and I don't take care of. The other thing is rethinking how we see the world. Men probably don't get this, but women may. And the idea is oftentimes the way that men perceive the world is fundamentally different from women. I think all that's an obvious idea, right? Women tend to micromanage the face. They get very close to a mirror, and that's normal, because as you put makeup on, you don't want your lipstick going over here, and and I assume the men are not putting lipstick on. That's maybe is that true? Okay. But if you take a look, it's too close to the mirror. So every little tiny wrinkle, it's this little dot. It's that little thing that makes me look bad. But when I do an analysis of the face, I stand about 5 feet away. Because why? That's how you and I see each other, right? We don't get up close and are 2 inches away from our face going, this little line makes me look bad. Of course I can manage all that. But it's rethinking what you see and what you know. And that's so important here. I think this is exciting. Most people today, I would assume in this room, don't want an incision. This is entirely incisionless. That's a nice thing. No bandages, no sutures, no knives, no cutting. So this is a different idea altogether. Let's talk about the eye. If you start with the area that I consider the most important thing, it's the eye. Because if I'm done with you and you still look tired, I've done nothing for you, right? If someone comes up and goes, oh, do you have enough rest? What's going on? Are you angry? Then I've really done nothing for you. Okay, so let's talk about the eye, and let's do some challenging thinking here. This is a young lady. She's only 39. And if you believe it, she's already had a brow lift and eyelid surgery on your left. Does that look rested to you? Or does she still look tired? And let's look at the upper eyelid crease. Everyone in the Asian community is obsessed with not getting a huge crease. And I agree with them. But you know what? I'm equally obsessed when I deal with a Caucasian, because look at her in her late 20s. Did she have a high crease? No. So a brow lift and eyelid surgery, traditionally speaking, has altered her identity. Not terribly, it's not a bad procedure, but it didn't deliver anything except a change in identity. What I did with her is I put the brow back down. So here's a challenge. Look at the brow on your left, and if you look at it, it looks too heavy, right? Would you agree? It looks too heavy. Therefore, I made it heavier in order to make it look lighter. Have I blown your mind? Because this is a perception thing. Most people say, oh, it's too heavy here. Shouldn't you lift it? But you feel it. And that's the trick. I made that brow 3 times heavier in order to make it look lighter. So that's the challenge, is see what I see. Now, if I just filled the brow, would that look good? No. There's no facial balance. If you look at her cheek, it has to be augmented and balanced with the brow. So you have to have a good eye when you do this. This is not a mechanical exercise. This is understanding youth and beauty and shape. Here's a lady, 47. It was an interesting story. She was doing a live testimonial in front of an audience like you. And she said she just recently was photographed, and another photographer friend said, you know, I want a model just like her who's 25. Well, she's 47. And if you see what I did, let's take a look at this analysis. It looks like a low-hanging brow, right? I didn't lift it. I filled it. Now, it's hanging over the eyelid, so in this case, I took a tiny bit of skin, but I filled it. I filled it, and you see that eye bag? I don't. There's no eye bag. It's hollowness. I filled it. There was no eye bag removal. I filled it with fat. Let me give you an analogy that will help you understand this. I heard this recently, and I thought it was a brilliant way to think about this. If we look at the lower eyelid like a seashore, okay, it's high tide in youth. As we get older, the tide settles away, and we see the rocks. And the rocks are your lower eyelid bags. So instead of taking the rocks away, we need to fill it back up to high tide. So what you see as an eye bag, I see as a hollow rim, okay? And if you look at her, the skin is improved for 2 reasons. I improved it with plasma resurfacing, which is another topic I'm not going to get into. But also there's more light. Because think about this, when you and I see each other, when you look at, and you get you look at the plastic surgery photographs, they're done with flash. But if you and I see each other, it's just overhead lights. And here's the thing, that's how we look at each other and we perceive that person being tired, because overhead lights is what causes the shadow. But look how much light it hits that face. And this is very, very controlled lighting. There's no ambient lights, and I won't get into all the details unless you want me to, but it's extremely controlled in my photography standards. And I write about it all the time. Look at the eyes on the right. Look sagging, right? What I see is an eye that's proportionally too big for the frame. So I reframed it. And when I reframed it, it looks young again. No cutting. In fact, you listen to her testimony on my website. She went to 10 plastic surgeons. They all, 50% said to cut, 50% said, oh my God, let's not do that. I'm glad the 50% actually won out until she saw me. Here's the same thing. Eye bag, bulging eyes, right? No. It just needs volume. And that's all I did to create balance. Eye bag? No. Brow descent? No. And if you see, this eye is sort of in between the other two I've shown you. It's not too low, not too high. It's in between. But I want to show you something different. Do you see this line right here? That's what I see, and that's what I fill. It's exposure of bone. When you expose bone, you have age. So it's a rethinking from the ground up. There was no cut here. In fact, there's a 41-year-old lady, very young lady, with, on the left, a brow lift and upper eyelid done. Does she look young after that? It's accelerated her aging. So here's the challenge. I brought her brows lower. Everyone else brought them up. I'm doing the exact opposite of everything you know. And by the way, that's 15 months out. Does fat last? I'm going to show you it improves over time, and I'll walk you through that. Let's talk about inverting the triangle. You heard that before. Is every time I do fat the same? No. Absolutely different. Here's a 46-year-old Chinese woman. Took a little bit of skin from the upper eyelids. But does she look slimmer after I added fat? Everyone says, I don't want to have a pumpkin face. I don't look fat. How about I slim your face with fat? Did I blow your mind? Because the whole idea is understanding how to sculpt the face beautifully. She looks, there's no liposuction, no facelift, no cutting, except for a little bit of the eyelid skin. But I filled it, and now she's slimmer because I sculpted the face slimmer. Let's look at the opposite example. Here's a 49-year-old, very beautiful lady who's had some brow work, etc., but she looks gaunt and tired. So I widened her face in order to make it look more beautiful. So you have to have an eye. This is not just a mechanical exercise. This is artistry. Here's a lady, 56, who's already had a brow and eyelid surgery on the left. Is that rested to you? No bag removal, no brow lift, no facelift, adding fat. 55-year-old, you get the point. Adding volume, converting the triangle. And actually she looks less heavy in the jawline, right? With no facelift, no cutting. I hinted on this before, but it's a very, very important thing, because almost no plastic surgeon ever asks to look at your old photos. And simply in one word, they can't deliver that. Okay? That's more than one word. But anyways, you get my point. Here's a lady who's had a brow lift on the left. Does it look rested? Besides not looking rested, she had all this hair loss from a large incision. Now it's rested. And look at her photo 15 years prior. That's getting her closer to her own identity instead of taking it away. Now when you look, here's a perception on the left. You see a line, right? You see acne scarring. What I see is volume depletion. Now I couldn't even touch her with an incision because she's on a product called Accutane, but I was able to deliver a result with no cutting, just volume. And if you look at her the top right from 49, she looks much closer to herself in her 20s, which is a low full brow. That's a frontal view. And here's a lady here, oh, sorry. Here's a lady 59, and if you see, that eyelid skin is just hanging over the eye, so I took a tiny bit of skin out, volumized her lower eyelid, did a little chemical peel, little lip enhancement. If you see, who got her closer, the previous surgeon's work or mine, from 59 to 35? Restoring identity. You saw this earlier. The idea is taking someone that looks like that and making them look like this, and giving them their identity back. This is why implants fail, because implants exacerbate the hollow under the eyes and the area called the buccal area, okay? Does fat go away? I thought fat goes away after a few weeks, a few months. I was talking to some people earlier. How about it gets better over time? I'm going to show you this. Actually, my fat results look the best about a year out to 2 years out. This is a 51-year-old. Facelift, fat graft, 6 weeks out, you can still see the swelling. 6 months out, okay, with no sleep. Less than 1 hour, I got a great photo. She said, don't take my photo today, doctor. I said, perfect time, because I'm going to use this. And if you look with no sleep, which looks more rested? 8 hours or 0? 14 months out, okay? Look at her at 35. Now, those cheeks at 35 were too big. So you have to understand how to sculpt it right. So you don't necessarily have to match an old photo. And that's part of the dialogue and communication. That's a book that I wrote that came out January of 07. Rethinking hair. We're just a couple things for the guys here, but I also do a lot of women. The idea, we talked about framing the Ollinger idea. What makes that hairline look unnatural up there? It's like a picket fence. It's a straight line, you know? I mean, I don't use rulers to draw my hairline. I think that gentleman did, so I did a little correction. The angles are better. It's softer. You know what? I don't only take 35% credit for my work because this is a team. It's like building a car, unlike what I've just presented to you. And the whole team has got to be perfect when you do this work. And my team is. What's up there? Plugs, right? Plugs. I have actually on my website for all the guys out there, 1080i close-up video of this correction in full screen mode. Then you can see this, how good the correction is. What's up there? Pubic hair, sorry. Bad, no, they didn't transplant from the groin. But it's bad technique, it's traumatic insertion, and there's no density. These are all one treatment sessions, okay? And here, pitting. Do you see the little holes? Those traumatically inserted and placed too deep. And that's a correction. These are all corrective works. And this is a guy that had 7 transplants on the left, 5 scalp reductions. You can see the scar. That's one of mine. Okay, finally some Asian. Everyone asks me, why don't you have more Asian? I thought you do a lot of Asians. I do, but none of them allow me to use your photos. So I've got all these ones cropped off. This is a Chinese gentleman in his 40s. A Japanese gentleman just reframing the hairline. Chinese gentleman, hairline work in central mid-scalp.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
You haven't told us how you do this. That's not inserting fat. So.
Yes, actually it is. No. The idea here is that you harvest hair from the back of the head, okay. And it really is not uncomfortable whatsoever, but you take a little strip of it, and you close that little incision, you take the hairs and you move it forward. And the reason that you don't lose the hairs when you transplant it, it's a principle called donor dominance, established back in the 1950s by a gentleman named Norman Orangereich out of New York. And the idea is that the hair that is genetically programmed not to be lost will not be lost when moved to a different zone. Because if you think of a gentleman that has no hair, he still has hair in the back. And that hair is great donor hair, and that's moved to another location. Is that clear? Okay. Oh, okay. This is my only two session I'm showing you. That's Vietnamese gentleman. Oh, sorry. One session in the front, and then one session in the crown. Work back here, and you can see how precise those angles are. I just thought that would be interesting to throw a few of those slides in. And a gentleman that really has no hair, I can't get the whole thing covered, didn't have enough donor density, but at least something up on top to get a frame. Same thing here, very poor donor density, but it was enough to at least get some kind of frame to the face. And female hairlines, it's a total different thing. If you want to ask me about it afterwards, I can talk about it, but I really truly designed beautiful female hairlines, totally different from men. So I'm going to just introduce my staff. And all my staff, by the way, except my mom, who's here tonight, I did with just Restylane. I'm going to challenge your thinking about Restylane even. Constance, my patient care coordinator. No line fills. I don't fill lines. I fill volume. Marcy, only 34. Beth, who really is a wonderful lady in the back when we do surgery. Darla, who is a great surgical assistant. Vasilka, who does my hair with me. Same with Darla. Diane, who's my boss. No, she really runs the surgery center and everything there. And my mom. This is actually a little swollen. She's here tonight. And if I can disclose her age because I think it's okay. She's 68, and no cutting. This is only 2 months out. She's now close to 3 months out, so it's much, much better looking than this photo. But I didn't have time to retake the photo. And what's also nice, I do fat in the hands to get face and hands balanced. So this is my building. You're welcome to come visit any time, and I appreciate your attention tonight.